This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you're listening to the Sunday Twilight show with Maud. It is 5 p.m. on Sunday the 10th of September, and you can join me using the chat function. We can discuss today's topic, which is parental involvement in education. Welcome!
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Good afternoon, or shall I say late afternoon and early evening, fellow educators and dear listeners. This is my 46th radio show as your hostess, and I'm delighted to share this experience in your company. But first, I have to introduce myself to any new potential listener. I am Maud, a French citizen of French and West African ancestry. I have been living in the United Kingdom since August 2008, and I am a professional educator. I work in a secondary state school in North London where I teach French and Spanish. I have also experience as a teacher in the charity sector. You can follow me on X/Twitter at ProfMFL. All views are my own. Today I would like to focus on a topic that is relevant to me as an educator and personally in my personal life as a parent. The podcast and discussions will both be on the topic of parental involvement. This is mostly relevant to teachers and educators, parents, students, people interested in education, and the curious and well-informed. First, we need to look at terminology. How can we define the term parental involvement? Well, parental involvement means that most children have two main educators in their lives. They have their parents or their guardians, and they have the people they see at school, their teachers, teaching assistant, and all the staff that interact with children in a school. Parents or guardians are the prime educators until the child attends an early years setting or starts school. And the parents or guardian remain the most important and major influence on a child's learning throughout school, but also beyond, until they reach adulthood. Parental involvement is multifaceted. It is hard to describe because it's not just one thing. Parental involvement is not always clearly defined or understood. What does it mean in the literature? It means that we are referring to different parental behaviors. When we talk about parental involvement, we talk about parenting practices, such as the aspirations that a parent has for their child, what they want their child to do at school. It can be only focused on academic achievement. But not only, it can also be the way the parents or the guardians communicate with their children and also with the staff at school. It can also be the way the parents value the school and education in general. Parental participation can also be included when we talk about parental involvement. Are parents coming to see school fairs or summer concerts? Are parents helping out when there is sports day, etc.? And then there are parental communications with the teachers, with the receptionist, and with all the people who work in a school. And finally, there is the rules at home. The rules that are set by the parents and that are considered to be education related. For instance, what time do children go to bed? Do children wear a uniform? How often the uniform is washed, etc. Parental involvement is very different from parental engagement. According to researchers Harris and Goodall in 2007 and Goodall and Montgomery in 2014, parental engagement is different because it is what's active and meaningful in the parents' involvement in their child's learning. So parental engagement is only focused on the learning. Parental engagement represents a greater commitment or ownership of action rather than parental involvement. What does the general public understand when we talk about parental involvement, though? Well, in education today, most people see parental involvement as how parents are involved in the life and work of the schools their children go to. Obviously, if the children are homeschooled, parental involvement is the education they are providing to their child at home. Parental engagement is a little bit different because it refers to the way the parents engage in the way their children learn in the home. So it means the way their children do their homework, if they go to museums, if they do extracurricular activities, but also how they do their homework for school and in school, and also if they go to other settings such as churches or youth clubs in the wider community. So parental engagement is supported by discussion between parents and the staff who take care of their children. And parental engagement focuses on how families can build on what's done in school or the youth groups or at church. This means that you do not need to feel like you have to be involved in your child's school directly via fundraising or via attending concerts or events. Parental engagement can be done from home. But there is definitely a continuum between parental involvement and parental engagement. There is a movement between the two, and it represents a shift in emphasis because nowadays, when we think of parental involvement, we think more about the relationship that parents and schools have together. And sometimes we forget that it can also be the relationship between parents and their child's learning outside school. Because I want to talk about the broader issue, I'm going to refer to parental involvement. Because parental involvement is not just about learning. Parental involvement is the dreams that parents have for their child. It's also their aspiration, and it's everything they do and the way they bring up their children. So today's podcast will be focused on parental involvement. And we will have two interviewees, Sylvie and Laura, who both have many years of experience in state schools in the UK as linguist and teacher of languages. But first, before we meet Laura and Sylvie, let's listen to the news.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
RAC remains the top education story across many media outlets, with the BBC focusing on the impact the issue is having on universities across the UK. The news website refers to closures of lecture theatres, science labs and student unions. So far, 14 universities have told the BBC that they have closed or partially closed areas containing the reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete. Some lectures have had to be relocated, and a small number of universities have had to find alternative accommodation for students, as halls of residence have also been affected. This has placed additional pressures on universities already facing housing shortages, with charity Unipol suggesting that student housing shortages are going to get worse in some cities. Student numbers are growing, but the number of new rooms is tumbling. This is largely due to high building costs, older buildings falling into disrepair, and now RAC concerns are adding to the issue. Last week, the DfE published the list of 147 schools in England built using the concrete. 6 unions have now written to Education Secretary Gillian Keegan asking a series of urgent questions. The BBC says that Essex is the county in England with the most affected schools, with 25 closed, partly closed, or making alternative arrangements. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has dismissed suggestions that he was at fault for the concrete crisis. During Prime Minister's question time, he said his government had acted decisively, whilst opposition leader Sir Keir Starmer referred to him as Captain Hindsight. In Wales, only 2 schools have so far been affected by RAC, but First Minister Mark Drakeford said inspections were ongoing. In Scotland, Humza Yousaf has outlined his plans for the coming year, with a heavy focus on expanding childcare provision, saying it is the best way to support families. This plan includes the recruitment of 1,000 more childminders by 2026. Free childcare hours are being extended to 2-year-olds across the country. There will be a pilot of expanded care from 9 months to the end of primary in 6 local authority areas, and free school meals for P6 and P7 pupils moves forward. But those in receipt of the Scottish Child Payment will receive them first by 2024, with others following by 2026. Last week, Mr Yousaf also commented on the issue of banning single-use vapes, and linked this to the comments made about young people using vapes too often. He stated that the government will consult on curbing the sale of disposable single-use vapes, including consulting on an outright ban. According to The Guardian, South Korean teachers have staged walkouts over harassment by parents and students. Thousands of staff attended a rally in Seoul demanding better protection after a number of teacher suicides. Teachers are being increasingly vocal about their experiences of maltreatment, including being accused of child abuse after disciplining students. Around 15,000 teachers attended a rally last week, and some schools had to temporarily close due to a lack of staff. As of June 2023, 100 school teachers had died by suicide in the country since 2018. The current Education Ministry blamed the current situation on previous governments, saying that they had overemphasised students' human rights over teachers' rights. Finally, The Guardian also reports that a city in Japan is tackling a rise in truancy with the help of robots. 2 schools in Kumamoto have purchased mechanical assistants to help children regain confidence in dealing with teachers and their peers. It is hoped the robots will encourage children to attend classes remotely and eventually coax them back in person. The robots will be equipped with microphones, speakers and cameras. Students learning remotely will be connected to the robots via laptops, allowing them to attend and take part in discussions. The robots will not be confined to classrooms, but be free to roam so pupils can take part in other events and enjoy social times remotely too. Japan, like many countries, including the UK, is facing a rise in the number of pupils refusing to go to school since the pandemic. Could robots be the key to improvement? This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
Good afternoon, Sylvie, and thank you for joining us. So you sent me your biography prior to the interview, and I could see that you have a lot of experience in being an MFL teacher because you started in the 80s in the UK. So can you tell me now, what have you been doing since 1986?
So 1986, 1987, I was a lectrice at the University of Leicester. And then they were going to renew my contract, not renew my contract, renew my contract, not renew my contract, until I found out in May that they weren't. So I applied for a PGCE in Aberystwyth. And from there, I taught 1 year in Buckinghamshire, a short time in Shrewsbury, mostly French at this stage, and EFL. And then I moved to the Isle of Man. My husband's a geologist, so it was a big attraction. So we moved to the Isle of Man, where I've been teaching French and Spanish, apart from a sabbatical year that I spent in Reggio Emilia in Italy, where I went back to teaching English. So yeah, that's me.
So you definitely follow the linguist profile because you've been teaching English as a foreign language, but also to other MFL, Modern Foreign Languages. Fantastic. So I'm sure you have a lot to tell us about parental involvement, which is today's topic. So you've been explaining how you've worked in education for most of your working life. And what were your main responsibilities at work regarding parents and parental involvement?
Okay, so I spent 18 years as head of department. So you definitely get the flack. You get the good bits too. So my main involvement with parents was in very recent years, sadly, when they wanted to withdraw their children from languages, and that's happened more and more, I have to say, since Brexit. But mostly it's been to do with school trips. I've been very lucky that I've run about 27 school trips. So all the practicalities, all those meetings beforehand, afterwards, during, no, because you're abroad, but the phone calls, we had this policy of setting, so that's always quite controversial with some parents who feel that their children have been unfairly dealt with. What else?
So that is very subject specific. So the school trip, yes. The fact that it can be an option that people want to take or not, and the setting. What about behavior?
Yeah, behaviour also as support for the staff in my department. Yes, I mean it usually started with a phone call. Didn't go straight to a meeting. The meeting was really when we felt that we'd taken every possible approach and nothing had worked, and then we usually organised a meeting with parents and their child, so that every side could be heard, and we could all be involved in seeking a solution.
Okay, I see. So you mentioned a change in the relationship with parents in after Brexit. So Brexit referendum was 2016, quite a long time ago now already. Mm-hmm. And you said that you had more meetings discussing dropping out from French.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any other change compared to when you started?
Well, as well as hitting Brexit, what we hit, those of us who started before 2004, is that before 2004, in the UK, languages were compulsory all the way to GCSE. And saddened that it wasn't. It's no longer the case because it's become a bit of an elitist subject. Even exam boards say so, sadly. I don't know why it should be seen as elitist because the majority of the world is bilingual.
It's multilingual. Yeah, indeed.
Exactly. So it's become this elitist thing. It's associated to snobbery. A lot of the time as well, for a certain generation of parents, it's associated to, I used to be put in a really uncomfortable position of having to speak out loud in front of the class, and I found it humiliating, and I don't want my child to go through this. Mm-hmm. I think parents think that the experience of their child will be the exact same as theirs was. And you tackle this, especially, there's also not just the post-Brexit child, but there's also the post-COVID child, where anxiety is major or can be major, and the idea of, oh my goodness, I'm going to be judged. And I think we especially struggle in Britain, where people sadly are still judged on their accent, and they feel that it's going to apply. Little do they know that in French and Spanish speaking countries, and probably others, you're judged on your spelling more so than on your accent, So I think there's all sorts of hang-ups there, from the way that parents were taught, but also from circumstances beyond the teacher's control.
So it seems like there was a lot of politics involved in your parental relationship over the years, with that decision in 2004 to drop languages as compulsory or core subjects, saying that the government said they wanted by 2027 to have all students learning a language, which seems pretty unlikely to be to come to fruition, because we don't have enough teachers now to teach languages.
No.
And also too many students are not in a school where there's someone who can teach them, or because it might be due to timetable issues or availabilities of classrooms, etc. So we're going to be far from having languages as a core subject again. Now, you mentioned that you had sometimes difficulties talking to parents because they had a negative experience in their own learning and in their past. How do you feel about your profession now? Because it's changed a lot. So what was your personal feeling being an MFL teacher?
Yeah, so I'm not just an MFL a teacher, I'm also a parent, and I could see this in my own child, that potential anxiety. As you say, it has changed a lot. There are, there's a number of fantastic websites that have been created that are really helpful. I think you get through to parents when you start mentioning all the correlations with other subjects, how helpful languages are with maths, with music, with English, and you point out that it's just another tool in a box you're trying to bring out, and we have image issue, haven't we? Because a lot of parents think that all you're going to achieve is get a grade at GCSE or be able to order a beer when you're abroad.
Sylvie,
yeah.
Can I stop you there? Because we have a lot of a kind of sizzling sound on the line. So could you try and re-explain what you've just said, because you got caught a bit?
Right. I was in the middle of saying that a lot of parents believe that learning a language is to do with being able to order a beer when you go abroad. And they don't see that learning a language is so much more. It impacts on, it's been well documented that it impacts on your unlikelihood, although nothing is certain, of getting degenerative diseases later on. The more you speak languages, the less likely you are to get Alzheimer's, for example.
Yes.
But it also, more in the short term, it impacts with your other subjects. You are more likely to do well in maths if you're a good linguist, and reversedly. You are more likely to do well in your GCSE English because you're more aware of the structure of a sentence. There are correlations with music. There are correlations with history. It's just finding that hook that will get you to see all those links with other subjects.
Yes, there's lots of transferable skills that we learn in languages, and I'm always amazed when my students tell me, "Oh, we don't know what's a possessive pronoun or an adverb," and then when I teach them what they are in French, they realize that they've been using them in English, but without knowing the actual meaning, or sometimes they're the job or the function that word has in a sentence. So I do think we help other subjects when we teach modern foreign languages. So when we talked about the relationship with your students' parents, there was sometimes misunderstanding and sometimes confusion. Now, in your positive relationships with the students, what really worked and what really had a good impact?
Sorry, did you mean students or students' parents?
Students' parents.
Right. Okay. So what really worked?
Sylvia, I'm going to stop you again. There's that sizzling sound that's back on. I think we have a bit of a connection issue. Can you hear yourself clearly when you're speaking?
Yes.
Oh, so maybe it's coming my way. That's all right. Now let's try again.
Okay. Right.
Do you have headphones?
Not near me, but I can get headphones.
No. I don't think it would change anything. But I think it might be a mic or a network issue. Oh well, let's try again. So, Sylvie, what worked well in your positive relationship with your students' parents, please?
Okay. So, other than school trips, where parents really saw how their children had flourished whilst staying in a host family, for example. Other than this, which was a positive experience, we used to invite year 6 and their parents, year 6 children that were going to become our intake in year 7, to attend 3 pre-holiday languages lessons. And the parents would come along and see how their children would actually learn. And they saw how we used to teach languages in our department. And that made a big difference.
So do you think it's that face-to-face meeting and also just simply explaining what we expect from the students that worked?
Yes, yeah. Not so much the expectation, but the actual catching them learning, catching them enjoying themselves, catching them being exposed, catching them making connections, suddenly realizing that, croissant is a French word, and it means crescent, like a moon, or, all those little connections that suddenly make them, get them hooked.
Yes, and motivated by definition.
Indeed.
So you said you organized 27 school trips.
Mm-hmm.
Which is amazing. Well done. Because it is quite a stressful thing. You have a lot of responsibilities. It's dedication on your behalf that you organize so many trips. Did you really see these trips as being impactful on the uptake for foreign modern languages in your schools?
Yes, at some point, all our sixth formers were made of people who had been on one school trip or another. It really made a difference. Yeah.
And it's this is the tragedy that now it's more difficult to organize school trips. We have budget cuts and also having Brexit making longer waits at the border is not helping.
No, quite. No.
Mm-hmm. Which is why I haven't been able to organize school trips lately, and it's really, really sad. I'm hoping this coming year I will be able to. So in an ideal classroom and an ideal situation, what do you think parental involvement should be like? So if we're addressing a parent of a year 6 child, what would you recommend this parent to do?
Exposure, bringing out curiosity, encouraging curiosity, for example, asking their child, where does this word come from? How many students have we had who hadn't realized that breakfast meant break fast, like déjeuner or desayuno, or night being connected to the number 8 in so many languages, or encouraging curiosity by, when you're eating something or you're choosing food, where does this food come from? Where does this name of a football player, an actor, whoever, come from? what is the other language on your clothes label, for example? Where is that from? I think parents should also encourage a little and often approach. You're not going to be fluent overnight. It's a rigorous but frequent approach. Finding the hook, and that applies to teachers too. What historical period interests our students, and is it connected to the foreign language we are teaching? The hook can obviously be a football team, an interest in a country, an interest in a landscape, an interest in gastronomy, and just creating a little routine with your child of encouraging that curiosity. I think the other thing that is really helpful in terms of exam is to ask your child to summarize whatever they've been watching, either a short news clip or a series, because that teaches children to be more concise and realize that you can express the same idea with different words. And often that's what we do as linguists. We've forgotten the word for something. It happened to me in Italian during my sabbatical year. I was asked, why did I use a laundrette rather than another? And I remembered, I couldn't remember clean, but I could remember dirty, so use not dirty. Use the repertoire you've got.
It's also about accepting failure. I think we have a culture where we don't talk about failure. We don't view failure as a way to become successful. And if you look at business people, the most successful ones have had quite a few big failures in their lives, in their ventures. So I think we need to also teach the children to be resilient. And by resilient, it means accepting that we can't get it right all the time.
Absolutely.
And it's a simple thing, but I think people just don't like this feeling of failing, and then they try their best to not be in the situation when it happens, which is not conducive of learning, obviously. So you gave some very good pointers in nurturing curiosity in your child and showing them that the world is complex but also fascinating. You mentioned labels, everyday objects, the croissant that you're going to find in your shops, in your local shops. So it's to have a curious look onto the world. Now, how would you support the learning of languages when you are maybe someone who doesn't have much time, a parent who doesn't have much time? So do you have any tips on how to support MFL learning, not just for the GCSEs, because it would be a bit short-sighted, but in general?
Again, that little and often it should not be 40 minutes at Key Stage 3. It shouldn't be 40 minutes learning the night before. It's got to be something gradual. It's got to be something that where you can make associations. Oh, look, that word ends with this, just like another word that we have in English. Teach your child to notice things, and also communicate with your child's teacher. Children can be expert at being divisive. It has to be said. I've heard so often, "Oh, my child wouldn't lie." We all would. We all would, given a certain situation. And if there's been a breakdown in communication, make that phone call, meet the teacher, see where we want to go together as a team, so that the child can absolutely flourish.
Yeah, I think parents should understand that unless there's a a big case, but most teachers just want a little bit of help and support so that the child thrive. It's not in our interest as teachers to have students who don't get good grades and who are unhappy to go to class. We want our students to be enjoying the lesson, and we want our students to succeed and go on to the college they want to go or the university they want to go. So it's a partnership, isn't it?
Absolutely. The partnership can also be done, for those poor schools that are in a situation of doing hybrid learning at the moment, or in fact completely online learning due to RAC. Which helping your child be organized with the password for the websites that the teacher has advised, creating little routines of, what are you going to teach me? Getting the child to teach you or teach their siblings some words is always good at confidence boosting.
True. I just had a thought when I was reflecting on what you were saying, Sylvie, and you did say that supporting your child wasn't just doing homework for 45 minutes the day before. So what's your view about homework for MFL, Sylvie?
I think it's a necessary evil, and I don't think it's an evil. I don't think any human brain can be passive in their learning and not feed the brain in between those lessons. Especially, there's a real issue of how much the timetabling has been hacked. A lot of Key Stage 3, a lot of schools at Key Stage 3 have only got one language or one lesson a week, or they're on a rota, they do 6 weeks and they don't see the students for another 6 weeks, etc. That is simply not doable without doing some homework. But homework can be very pleasant. Homework can be lyricstraining.com. Homework can be all sorts of creative things. And it doesn't have to be, I think parents have got the wrong image of homework. They don't see how enjoyable homework can be, and the amount of enjoyment that you get from a task finish, a task well done, a task you're proud of, and that goes beyond languages. It applies to everything.
Yes, I agree with you. I'm learning a fourth language, and it's very tricky. And if I don't practice regularly, I forget all the new words I've been trying to remember. So I see it. I try to walk in my students' shoes, and I know that if I don't use one word for 3 weeks, this word is just going to evaporate from my brain. So having exposure, regular exposure, is the only way. And I really emphasize that this is the good type of homework, the one that brings back the knowledge you've learned in class. It shouldn't take too long, though, because some teachers forget that there's other subjects. And you can't be spending 3 hours every evening, particularly for also students who have special educational needs, who might need more time than other students to complete their homework. So it needs also to be differentiated if possible.
Yes, I mean, at that point, I'm not sure I agree. I think your dyslexic student or the student with special educational needs feels more equal because, from year 7, everybody's starting a new language, mostly. I mean, I know provision varies in England, and there are some who would have done a language in primary school, but mostly it's equal opportunities at that stage. And we are very good at giving tips to learn. Danielle Morgan, I follow regularly, and I've got her books. And she talked about teaching beaucoup, big elephants are ugly because of ugly parents. Giving those little hints really help everyone, dyslexic or not.
Oh, I wasn't thinking of dyslexic. I was just thinking that I have students who are, for instance, have ADHD and autism. And for them, just even writing is difficult. So it also depends on the level of needs
It does.
that you find in your classroom. But a lot of my special educational needs students are very motivated and succeed much more because we also time and we might give them more visuals to work on. So it really depends on the level of needs and the diagnosis they have to face. Do you have any recommendations for teachers who start their career in MFL on how to approach parents?
Okay, so first of all, it's not personal. And that's, we often think it is, but it's not personal. I don't want to generalize, but usually a parent that is critical has got other things going on in their life that, they're basically often saying, I can't cope. And it's not just your subject they can't cope with. It's a number of things, and you're just the last drop. And secondly, do a bit of PR. Try and look for the positive. Your child now knows the days of the week, which they didn't do 2 weeks ago. Or praise any little achievement. And that usually shows that you are totally behind the learner and totally on side.
Yes, it's always starting with a positive. It's a smooth way to start. All right. Now, you also mentioned that you were a parent. So what did you do to support your children when they were learning their modern foreign languages, Sylvie?
Well, I'm French, so I spoke to my child in French throughout, from birth. I also speak Spanish, and my daughter went to a school that did French and Spanish. So, but because I was head of department, I deliberately, it's probably not what you want to hear for the sake of this program, but I deliberately did nothing because I didn't want my staff to feel that they were being supervised via my daughter. So I pretty much let them get on with it. I'm very that I have a department of very, when my daughter went through, very experienced, very skilled teachers. And yeah, I deliberately took a back step. The only thing we did, of course, was we went to South America, we went to Spain, we went to see family in France. She
got exposure in
she got exposure. Yeah, yes, absolutely. Yes.
So I gather that she did both GCSEs in French and Spanish then.
She did, yes, and then she even went on to do a degree in French, Spanish, Portuguese. Yes, yeah.
Which makes sense. She got inspired by her mother.
Yeah, you know what? I think she got inspired. The hook for her was music. Music for Hispanic countries and films for the French target language. And yeah, it was finding that hook. But, I do realize, I was in a lucky position that I knew a little bit about it and I could guide her choices. But I think with or without me, once she found these things, she would have carried on.
Yeah, they get motivated intrinsically after a certain
absolutely.
Fantastic. Now, obviously, this is because your daughter was in your own school. I assume that you took a step back.
That's right. Yes. Yes.
It would have been different if she had done another language as well that you don't speak, I assume.
No. Yes. Yeah. It would have been different, but I think once you're used to learning one or two languages, you know the shortcuts, don't you? You know that you want to expose your learners to chunks that are high frequency, verbs of opinions, verbs of asking if something is available, certain question forms, etc. So it's finding those shortcuts, and then also not be against Google Translate, deepl.com, or any of those modern tools that we are lucky to have. They're not necessarily a bad thing. They are if they make you lazy, but they might make you curious. How is that translated by deepl.com, or for example, or how differently would I translate it? And you can play along with that.
Yes, I mean, we have to use all the tools that are in our toolbox. And I mean, I use Google Translate myself sometimes. So if the teacher can do it, the students should do it as well.
Absolutely.
For sure. Well, thank you very much, Sylvie, for this, for answering my questions and for sharing your views. You have a lot of experience, and you seem like you have made a lot of efforts to promote languages by taking your students abroad. Do you have any advice to give to new teachers? Let's say that if there's an ECT MFL teacher, what would you tell them?
To do with school trips, or to do with
in general?
So look after yourself. It's a tough job. I've got a previous head teacher who recognizes that the MFL department teachers are usually the hardest working in the school. And I think we're trained through our subject to never give up, because we know what it took for us to get to be fluent, or at least good speakers of the language we teach. And we never give up. And that also means that we never want to feel defeated. So if a child rejects the lesson outright, we think, right, I'm going to try this new method, and I'm going to try this new tactic, and I'm going to try this and this. And we end up being exhausted from the sheer effort that requires. So when I say look after yourself, I mean that. I mean, sometimes you've got to accept that you've got to put yourself first. But my advice is expose them as much as possible to the fun you had when learning a foreign language. If you were an assistant and languages enabled you to get further in the country you lived in, talk about this. Don't hesitate to take 5 minutes, 10 minutes of the lesson talking about your own experience and where languages got you. And then if you do get a chance to take the students on a school trip, do it. It'll change many people's future, your impact on their future. Yeah.
Yes, and also it might be their only occasion to go on holiday. Some
Indeed.
students do not have families who can take them. So it is definitely life-changing. We all remember our school trips. I mean, many years down the line, we do.
Yes. We do. Yes. Yeah. I'm still in touch with the little host families that I used to stay with myself when I was learning English or Spanish. So yes, they make long life friendships as well.
Indeed. And it's always good to have a friend in another country, because we can practice our language and build a friendship. Indeed. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sylvie. It was delightful to get to know you. And I'm going to wish you a lovely Saturday and
Thank
evening.
you.
And
Yes.
also, I hope you enjoy the weather, because it's like being in Spain at the moment, isn't it?
Well, not in the Isle of Man, it isn't so much, but it's still
Isn't
warm.
it?
Well,
Oh,
it's 23 degrees, which is warm for the season. Yes, yes.
okay. It's 30 degrees in London.
Oh,
So,
yes. Oh.
all right. Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
This is 2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, this week we've all returned to work and I'm going to discuss the old argument of digital or paper diary. For every argument for going digital, there's a counter argument for not, and vice versa. You can access a digital diary from anywhere on any device, but if you don't have a signal, it's useless. A paper diary can't get hacked, but it can be picked up and read if left lying around. You get the point. I personally like a digital diary as it suits the way I work. I can add links to online meetings, add notes and attach documents. I can see my day, week, month, year at the click of a button. And the most useful thing for me is I get reminder notifications. One thing to consider if moving digital this year is policies on phones in your school, as this is the most likely way you'll access it on the move. And probably most importantly, if you're using your phone, will you be able to resist the notifications from other apps or emails you see when you switch it on to use it? Cost doesn't really apply as a factor because you probably already have a phone capable of running a digital diary. But work-life balance may need to be considered as the diary is there 24/7. This can, however, be remedied by using Do Not Disturb settings for notifications. In the end, it's a personal choice. Are you paper or digital? Let us know at TT Radio Official. I'm Steve Woods, and that was 2 Minute Tech.
2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Thank you, Laura, for being interviewed today. I appreciate this. It's delightful to meet you. So, Laura, could you tell us more about your professional experience so far in education?
Okay, well, it's really nice to be here. I've been working in education since 1999, when I spent my year abroad in France working as an assistante de langue anglaise, teaching primary school and secondary school children in Normandy in France.
Lovely, love Normandy. Where was it exactly?
In the small town of Mortain and Saint-Hilaire d'Arcouet.
Okay.
Still got real fond links to the area.
Okay, beautiful. I love Normandy. It's one of my favorite places to go to. And then what did you do?
I finished my degree, worked in business for a very short while, got enormously bored and trained to teach.
So when did you start teaching children in UK schools then?
Oh, my PGC, I think, started in 2001, I think. And I got my first job 2002, straight in.
So since 2001, you've had many educational secretary, and also you've had the change of having in 2004 the language learning was no longer compulsory, and then you also had Brexit in 2016, and I'm sure that has affected your experience. But my question today is to focus on parental involvement, just because I wanted to see what's done in UK schools, what are the challenges of getting parents involved in their students' learning, in their children's learning, because it's very different from primary school to secondary school. And I wanted to know what your experience is on that topic. So Laura, could you tell us, what are your main responsibilities at work regarding parental involvement?
Well, at the moment, I work in primary school. So my career's changed quite a bit since 2002. I've changed phase to work in primary schools, and my timetable is a lot lighter than it used to be in secondary.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised, Laura, because I assume that actually you have to teach all the subjects when you're a primary school teacher, so you have a lot of preparation involved.
I'm afraid that's absolutely true of my poor colleagues in primary education, but I am a specialist language teacher. So I'm self-employed as well. So I bob in and have a lovely time in the afternoon with the children while the poor hardworking primary school specialists catch up on their PPA.
Mm-hmm.
And I take the kids for a bit of fun in French.
Lovely.
It's really lovely.
Yeah, I used to do this in nurseries, and that was so cute. Mm-hmm. From age 1 to 4, just their first foray into modern languages. It is a delightful thing because at that age, they're very happy to see you. And I'm not sure teenagers in secondary school are so happy to see their French teacher.
Not always.
Not always, let's say. So how is parental involvement then in your new position?
Well, I'd say there's more of it because with primary schools, the relationship with parents is a lot closer. I mean, my colleagues see the parents daily. Sometimes they'll see them drop off and pick up, and there'll be little conversations at the school gate, which was really different to my secondary experience. When most of my secondary experience, there was a barrier between parents and teachers for most of the school year, apart from parents' evening. And that has its advantages and it has its disadvantages.
Why do you think that is? Because do you think it comes from the schools? Secondary schools just don't want parents in? Or do you think it's just because parents have devoted so much time dropping their children and picking them up when they were in primary school, and now they want to enjoy a little bit more freedom and go to work earlier or having other occupations? What do you think?
I think it could be a little more the latter, Maud. I think maybe parents are looking forward to their children becoming more independent. And of course, the teenage brain is trying to pull away from the parents and make this world their own. So it's understandable.
Yes.
However, I do remember sort of feeling in secondary school it was deliberate policy. My head teacher was there to protect me from parents. And I remember being told, you don't have to bother with this. It's not your problem. I'm going to deal with it as a deputy head or something.
Yes, and it is comforting when you know that SLT, senior leadership team, are here to protect you. It's just such a shock to go from meeting the parents in primary school, a lovely conversation, to being almost afraid of having interactions with the parents. What do you think happens between primary and secondary then?
I really don't know. I guess perhaps the imposition of a lot more rules at secondary school means that the relationship between parent and school moves from some sort of collaborative, cozy relationship where it's very limited. You know, there's just a teacher, class teacher, a head teacher, a child and a parent. It's a small relationship to a great big institution with lots and lots of rules and strictures over uniform and homework and things like that. And it becomes more oppositional. It's less of a collaboration, more of a demand that the child fits the system, perhaps.
Yes, definitely. It is a shame, though, because my children are in secondary school now, and I have almost no connection with the teachers unless it's parents' evening. And I'm fine with that because I have a lot on my plate at my own school. But I do feel like my children see people that I've never met, some teachers I've never met, and I don't know at all. So we lose a little bit of that. If she says, oh, so-and-so told us this, I can't picture the face of the teacher. And I think we lose out a bit on that. Distance, definitely. So when you, now you have more parental engagement, I would say, but see them often because you say you are self-employed. So I assume that your teachers will see the children's parents more, whereas you just pop in and out.
You're absolutely right. I am the Scarlet Pimpernel. I just pop in and I pop out again. But it's such a lovely school. There's so many warm relationships between teachers, teaching assistants and parents. And children are proud to go to school and they're so communicative that parents do greet me. They say, bonjour, madame, to me.
Oh, and they say it in French.
And they tell me that their children, love their French lessons and they're teaching their little brother or sister the French that they've learned in my lessons, which is just lovely. So I've had mostly really positive interactions, really, really warm and fulfilling.
And is it just informal? So when you see them out and about, or do you sometimes have to write something in their reports or make a phone call?
I don't tend to make phone calls, to be fair. A lot of our parents speak English as an additional language, and I think I've been discouraged from doing that because secretaries have told me that several parents might struggle with the language. But yes. I do communicate with parents because every half term I make sure that every class I choose 6 pupils who've done really well, and I write a little note home or send them a certificate. They regularly go home with stickers from me to sort of involve the parent in the lessons that they're studying.
Yes, and parents usually appreciate this, and the certificates end up on the fridge in the kitchen with magnets on.
Absolutely. That's the joys of primary school children. I must say, I think this attitude influenced my teaching in secondary because periodically I do bob back into secondary when I'm needed or when there's a job going that somebody convinces me is a really good idea. So last year I spent a couple of terms teaching English to catch up. Do you remember the program that the government put in place?
No.
I went into a local... Oh, it's just to help the children who are struggling over lockdown, particularly with English.
Oh, that one with tutors.
That's right. I was one of those tutors.
I forgot it was called Catch Up. Yeah, indeed.
The Catch Up Premium or something like that. And that was another lovely gig. I had little classes of 6 or 8 pupils in a room to my own. And we followed a program to get them feeling more confident with English and that kind of thing. I've got a degree in English. I'm quite confident with that. So that was really lovely. And I made, with such a small class size, it was easy to ring home and give some praise about those pupils. And the parents were shocked to hear from me frequently.
Yes, they're very glad when we make a positive phone call. Indeed.
Yes, absolutely delighted. And you really see it in the kids the next day. Miss, did you call my mum? She said she was really glad. I got tips out of that.
You would definitely recommend that for any teachers, whatever subject they teach, to devote maybe 1 hour every, let's say, 3 weeks or once a half term, just calling parents to make positive phone calls?
Oh, absolutely. I was able to do it every week because I had a light timetable. But if I had to do a negative phone call home, I'll make sure I do a positive one for somebody else. It just keeps your spirits up.
Yes, I do that too. Actually, I try and frame when I have to make negative phone calls. I start with a positive one, do my negative ones, and then finish with a positive one again. And it's good for my mental health as well because, it's never something we want to do, a negative phone call. Did you have to do some negative phone calls when you were working in secondary?
I have done occasionally. I do remember those moments, and you never know what you're going to get on the end of the phone line, whether it's going to be somebody who's accepting or terse.
So how did you prepare yourself for this?
I think I would think very carefully about how to say, and I would often try and frame things with a sort of a truth sandwich approach. Yes. I might start off with something positive about the child, and then say, but we do have this problem, or this problem occurred today, and I'd like you, if you could, to speak to him about it, or see if you could address her behaviour, that kind of thing. And then finish off with something positive for going forward, so we don't feel like this has been an entirely horrible experience.
Indeed. So classic sandwich method always works. And did you sometimes have to attend meetings with parents on some occasions?
Yes, I remember one occurrence particularly where the Senko asked me to come and sit in with a child I had concerns about. And that was, I remember thinking what a difficult job it is to be a Senko.
Yes, I wouldn't want this job. You have so many responsibilities, and it's very serious topics that they have to face on a daily basis. So salute the Senkos and the safeguarding officers in any institutions. So how do you feel about your profession as a whole? You've experienced primary on a self-employed basis, and now also you have experience in the secondary school. So how do you feel generally about your profession?
Oh, well, my profession broadly, well, I feel pretty proud because I think teachers as a group, they work really hard in sometimes difficult circumstances. And we've got the privilege of being intimately involved in the development of people. I mean, other jobs that I've dabbled in, like journalism, PR, business, there's not this deep involvement with the life of a whole person that teaching demands.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still slightly awed by this. But these days, I just love the relationship I'm permitted to develop with kids. I didn't always feel this way, I think. I've allowed myself some space and time to relax into the role. But when I was full-time MFL teacher, I think I was constantly stressed by things I wasn't able to do well enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I could get into a negative cycle of thinking about my role. But
yes,
I found I need the time as a part-time worker to really enjoy it again.
I think if we can, the best way to enjoy teaching is definitely part-time. I've experienced part-time and I really enjoyed it. The problem is that a lot of us are in full-time positions, so self-care is an important aspect of being a teacher, because we also forget sometimes to take, time off or leave early. So now, what do you think parental involvement should be like when you have a year 6 student and you might talk to the parents about the big change to big school in year 7? What would you recommend parents to do if they want to support their child?
I think parents can have a really important role with their older pupils of sort of maintaining the interest and the keenness to learn. They have time that teachers don't have to really converse with a student. I sometimes feel jealous that I would love to chat a little bit longer with these little guys. They're just bright as buttons and adorable, but I have to dash and I have to go to my next class. But the parents can question and draw things out, and they can also give their children the wealth of their experience, their knowledge of the world, their access to the information sources to give their children exciting little nuggets about education that they can share with their friends and share with the class and the teacher. And that values education for a child going forward into a new situation, that I have interesting things to say. My parents think this is valuable, and they're more prepared to embrace that challenge of secondary school.
Yeah, keeping curiosity and wanting to share is really important. It's something we try to nurture with our own children. I have to say it's getting a little bit more difficult when they age, because teenagers just want to run to their bedroom and put the music very loud. But in a year 6 setting, when you still have that enthusiasm and they want to share with us, it is definitely something that we need to nurture. So what can teachers do to increase positive parental involvement, do you think, in secondary school, which is a setting that might have, as you said, less parental involvement due to the fact that parents might want to go back to full-time working or just have younger children to take care of? So what can we do as teachers to increase positive parental involvement?
Well, I think they can work on the other side of that conversational equation I talked about. I think teachers can facilitate and instigate conversations at home. I mean, in my subject, I get kids to ask parents about community languages. I make sure that, community languages are so important to valorize languages people speak at home. Sometimes children don't know the language that their parents speak. Oh, my dad speaks African. Oh, right. Which one of the 3,500 odd African languages do you think it is? Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to do a project. Everybody go home, find out how to count to 5 in grandma's language or whatever. And that gives pride the home languages, and you get some really interesting discussions that come out of discussions at home. Like, we can all count to 5 in different languages, and our word for 4 in this language is the same as your word for 4. Isn't that interesting? So you can sort of help things mirror at home. If you take up any opportunity as well to communicate positives. You can send home stickers or notes or make those phone calls, and that will help engage the parents and make the parents curious about what goes on in lessons. And if the parents show curiosity about what the children are learning, the children are going to value that learning a bit more.
Yeah, it's great that you mentioned community languages. I have a school, I work in a school where we have 65 different languages spoken. And last year, I know it's a lot, I asked the students to record a family member reading a bedtime story they enjoyed when they were children. So we had many different recordings, some in languages I had never heard of. And it was fascinating. And the parents were really happy, although a bit confused when the children asked questions about their childhood, because they're not used to sharing their migrant journey. Sometimes they just assume that now the children are born here, we don't talk about it so much. But they were really curious and engaged. And I think anyone who works in a school where there's lots of people from abroad originally, it's a great way to get the grandmas and the uncles and the aunts involved. And it's fascinating to see how diverse the population is.
It is. And I absolutely love working with children who speak different languages at home. I find it so enriching. It's been a revelation. I was warned off early in my career, don't go and work in a school like that. Oh, dear me, no, those children are far too difficult. Nonsense. They're brilliant. I absolutely adore their attitudes and their keenness and the richness of their experience and how willing they are to communicate it. I just love it.
And they're usually quite motivated because their parents and grandparents wanted to get them to a place where they can have access to a good education. So they're usually really keen to learn.
That's been my same experience, absolutely.
Definitely. So if you were to speak to a trainee MFL teacher who hasn't taught yet, whether it's primary or secondary, what would you advise them to do to try and nurture that relationship with the parents?
At secondary level?
Oh, you can start with primary if you want, but I mean, if you have pointers for any, I'll take it.
I think at primary level, little communications like stickers on the jumper as they go home is a great way of communicating. It just gives a level of pride. It's really simple to do. It doesn't take you a long time. Whereas phone calls home are a little more complicated to organise and they have their pitfalls. So I think that's something to work up for and to script perhaps in advance. But positive phone calls home are a great way to nurture a relationship that you might have begun by just giving a kid a sticker.
Yes, that's a good idea. I think it should be timetabled because we rush constantly particularly when you're a new teacher and you have to get used to softwares and CPD and etc. So it should definitely be maybe every 2 weeks you have 45 minutes to make your phone calls, and it's in your timetable so that it becomes a routine, and then it's a good way to create that relationship.
That's a great idea. And I think sometimes it helps to frame your positivity. What are you going to call home about? Are you going to call somebody who's just brilliant at your language? Are you going to call somebody who's tried really hard with their homework? Are you going to call somebody who's made a lot of progress since you've seen them actually? Who may be low ability, but they've come on and they've made their effort.
It could be a theme of the week. If the week is about kindness, or you can just notice a moment when a child was very kind and then you call their parents and notify them of this. Or if the theme of the week is excellence in mathematics, then obviously you will call the one who had the best grade at the maths exam. But you can always find a topic to celebrate and praise for, I guess.
Well, I think it's also really useful if you share that with the children. You say, well, this week I really want to see somebody who's not afraid to make mistakes, or something like that. So if I think you've been really brave and tried hard but made a mistake and recovered from it, then I might call home about that.
Yes, definitely. I think it's brilliant to encourage people to approach failure in a positive way. as a learning curve.
Yeah.
So what is your relation with other colleagues who are parents, I'm thinking? Do you have sometimes to teach students you know the parents of? Have you been in that situation before, and how did you manage it?
Well, actually, I spend a couple of evenings a week tutoring, as well as other things. And so the children that I tutor are friends of my daughters who are now in year 11, and or children who are sitting exams in French that I know socially in the community, and parents know I'm a French teacher, so I've been called in by quite a few parents that I know to sort of help their children through difficult patches.
And how did it go?
Largely well, yes. I mean, once or twice I've had to tell a parent that really, you've got nothing to worry about. You don't need me. Your child's doing everything they need to do. So leave him alone and he'll be all right. And other times I've been well, yes, I can see we might have a little problem, and I'll do you a few lessons if you like, mates rates, and we'll sort the problem. But I've one student I've been teaching for years, and it's just, she really enjoys French and she likes that extra little bit of one-to-one that she gets with me.
Oh, they're the perfect students, the ones who really want extra.
Adorable.
I know. Could you tell us how you manage your own parental involvement in your children's education?
Right. Well, I'm pretty sure I'm a terrible nag to teachers, because I will communicate and ask questions and follow things up by email. I try not to be that parent constantly querying, but I think I'm pretty lucky in that both my kids have turned out pretty studious. They spend a lot of time on homework, and I was quite worried at first, and would ask if things were okay at school and ask teachers if they were doing the right thing. But I feel like the communication with school is really good, even if it's not very personal, because of the sort of electronic communications where there's an app that you can check the good things and the bad things that your child are doing. I feel like I've got a real handle on how they are doing at school, even if there's not a warm personal relationship. I know how the school is handling their ability and engagement with school.
You mentioned your children are studious, so do you need to help them for their revision, or are they independent?
They're very independent in some subjects, but the school really push mathematics. Mathematics demands hours of homework every week, and often a lot of input with maths. And there's a lot of discussion at home about subjects that they both really enjoy, like science and drama. And I also do teach them MFL myself. So there's I feel like I know what kind of a student they both are.
And what languages are they studying in school?
Only the one. I'm disgusted. I grew up in Wales where you had to do 3, and that was my option. I could do 3 languages. They just do German at school, and I teach them French at home.
Okay. So which languages did you learn when you were in Wales?
I learned, of course, Welsh. It was compulsory. And French and German and a smidgen of Japanese because I was that way inclined.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. And your children are just doing German. Well, I find that amazing because I live in North London and there's almost no secondary schools in the state sector that are still teaching German where I am based. So I think it's wonderful that your children can do this. And you mentioned teaching them French. How do you deal with motivating them to do so? Because that's on top of their many GCSEs and you do it at home. So how do you go about this?
Well, with my daughter, she's wildly ambitious. So she's quite easy to just dangle the idea of just a bit extra, a bit of a cachet on her GCSE record or something like that. And she'll go for it. She enjoys sharing lessons sometimes with her brother or sharing lessons with a friend who I tutor. And she just likes to hone her brain that way. My son's addicted to Duolingo.
Oh, I am one of those people.
It's an amazing app that they've designed it to be quite so compulsive.
It's addictive, definitely.
But that works for him. But he does like a little bit of input from me, and we've, since they were small, we've always explored French stories and nursery rhymes and things like that. We had a day this year in France, meeting lots of friends, so they're able to put it into practice.
They see the point of
I've still got plenty of links and friends, and they see people who speak other languages, and they understand the practical implications of having a different language.
Yeah, and that's precious because it is not common in the UK to have children who are motivated in learning one foreign language, let alone two.
Yes, it can be such an abstract concept, can't it, if you're not in that world?
Yes, although, I mean, in my school, most children are English as an additional language, and yet they're not so interested in learning French or Spanish. So I'm not sure being already a bilingual person always helps with motivation. But that might be just a local situation. So you did mention that your children are self-motivated, that you help them if they want some extra lessons. Your child is using Duolingo, which I recommend and promote to my students as well. And for those who think I have shares in Duolingo, I do not. There's other apps. Memrise as well is very good.
That's very popular as well.
Yes. I mean, any app that makes you revise vocabulary every day is the best tool to help an MFL teacher, because memorizing has to be done every day if we don't want to lose the vocab. So now, you mentioned that giving a sticker or certificate is a very good way to start a relationship building with parents. Then you also mentioned phone calls, positive ones preferably. Negative ones we might have to do, but we should have a routine of establishing positive phone calls. Is there any other ways of nurturing parental involvement that you've experienced or that you would wish to see in state schools in the UK?
Well, I kind of think performance is a great way to engage parents. When schools have a forum for children to show off their learning, I think that can be a real motivating factor for the pupil and a source of pride for the parent. So
That's
if there is
a great idea. I'm just saying it's a great idea.
Like that. I mean, I've known schools do great drama and things like that, and sort of celebratory evenings where they show off the talents of a certain year group or group of children. And it's a real fillip for parents to go and see their children express themselves. And I don't see any reason why my subject couldn't be celebrated in the same way.
So how would you see that in MFL? Would you want to see children singing French songs or German songs, or act maybe short mini plays in the language? How would you see it in MFL?
Oh, well, I think my particular preference is song. In primary school, it's so successful and popular method to get the children articulating. And they're so cute. Yes. I really love a song in assembly. That's a great way. But I do love drama too. And I have a dream that one day I'm going to get my year sixes doing Cyrano de Bergerac.
Wow.
Or something dramatic, maybe with a sword fight or something like that.
Or the Three Musketeers.
Absolutely. Something culturally recognizable.
That'd be brilliant. I love the idea of trying to be also challenging. You know, we don't need to teach them things that are easy. Cyrano de Bergerac is part of French classics, but they might never even hear about Cyrano de Bergerac.
No, but it's such it's a cultural coinage that spreads far and wide. It's been adapted for the cinema with Steve Martin, so you can have a great lesson on le tirade du nez when Cyrano de Bergerac has all his insults lined up to be aimed at a person with a big nose. And it was just in London, I believe, with McElroy. James McElroy was playing the role of Cyrano, so it's alive and kicking today in English and in French as a concept. The guy who sticks out because of his big nose.
I missed that because he's a local James McAvoy in North London. I've seen him a few times, and I didn't even know he played in a French play. Oh well, I'm sure I can see that.
Not in French, sadly, and even without the big nose, but I'm sure it was spectacular.
Translations are absolutely fine in my book. I'm trying to collate a bibliography for my students that is going to be containing French classics, but in English, because I do think you discover culture through books and through novels. And let's be honest, you can't start reading Émile Zola or Victor Hugo in year 7 when you have never done French before. So you could read them in English, and that's fine.
Absolutely.
So why not?
Well, I'm very impressed with a local secondary school here in Manchester that does units and units based on fairy tales.
Lovely.
And they find it a great way to present language in a familiar context and exploit it with children.
I hope they do censor the fairy tales a little bit, because French fairy tales are so dark.
They all tend to be recognizable sort of bowdlerized versions of fairy tales, I think.
Yes.
But I know what you mean. Madame le Prince de Beaumont, some of those are quite interesting to look at.
Yes, or Peau d'Âne, which is quite a dreadful story. I mean, I love old medieval fairy tales, but yes, even French nursery rhymes, there's always someone being murdered in one verse. So you really have to censor a lot of the lyrics.
Oh, you're so right. I mean, one of our holiday activities this year was visiting Le Puy du Fou.
Oh, lovely place.
Oh, what an astonishing place. And I was trying to translate the songs that were being sung to us over our lunch in a restaurant. All sort of traditional French 18th century style. And my children couldn't eat their dinner. They were so revoltingly dark.
Oh, no.
Some of these nursery rhymes. And they ate him? Really?
Yes.
Oh, the poor children.
I know. There's cannibalism. There's so many if you have students who love horrible histories, then you should do a topic on French nursery rhymes, because they'll love it. But if you have
you're putting the ideas here.
That's the whole
point.
my
year 6s would lap this up.
Exactly. I did a horrible histories club in my school, and the children loved it. And they brought me stories about, I can't remember his name, but a French man in the 17th century who could eat things whole and had an appetite that could never be fulfilled. I had never heard of him, and it's a historical character, and it was just gruesome at all levels. So if you love horrible histories, you can do a lot with French history.
That sounds great fun. Oh, they always love the Bastille Day lessons that I do.
Yes,
the more blood and gore, the better.
Exactly. I mean, even Alouette, which most people of a certain age have learned in their French classes, it's about, taking feathers off a poor tiny little bird. It's quite nasty, and yet it's a classic. Yes.
Absolutely.
So, Laura, what would you recommend for parents and newly qualified teachers then to improve their communication with one another and their child? What would you recommend?
Well, recommendations for parents. That's a good one. I would say always take an interest in what your children are learning, and make sure you have conversations about what goes on at school, what goes on in lessons at home. That's really important, I think.
I would even say at the dinner table.
Absolutely.
We do talk about what they're learning in science or history at the dinner table, and it can be, I mean, they can teach me a lot, by the way, my children, because they know already so much more. So definitely a good advice. Now, what about newly qualified teachers or teachers trying to diversify their practice? What could they do to improve their communication with parents?
Well, sometimes I think letting parents know what's being learned. I mean, every school website has its sort of learning journey and that kind of thing. But I think a specific communication home about what's being learned, what you can talk to your children about. Well, you know, we're going to be learning about food, and why don't you see if you can help your child talk about their favorite flavor of ice cream in French? And this is how we're going to teach it. So these are the resources you can use, and just engage the parents so that they can try that. I always appreciate it if I know from the teacher, from the horse's mouth, as it were, what's being taught, so I can guide that conversation.
Yes, definitely keeping in touch with what's going on and making sure the word is out. You did say that your children's school is very good at communicating.
Absolutely.
It's through social media, I guess, apps. Maybe they have an X or Twitter account, or the school website as well, I assume.
I think all of the above. There's a great school website, and the head teacher is he's very prolix. He writes a great newsletter celebrating all the positive things that are done in school, which we get emailed out, and it's very accessible to people because it's you can pick little bits from different subjects. There's so many opportunities for different children to be celebrated for different achievements in different subjects, and we're aware of the opportunities, after school opportunities, clubs that they could go to. So if you've got one who's a bit droopy and isn't really engaging with secondary school, the newsletter is the parents' opportunity to go, but look, on Thursdays, you could go in and do maths art club. Why don't you have a go at that?
Mm-hmm. Clubs can be a very good way as well to engage. We do have a newsletter as well in my school, and for Christmas we always try and add more pictures than usual so that the parents actually see what the children are doing. I think using visuals is really important to celebrate what they do in drama, what they do in music and arts and DT, because, you know, some parents also struggle with reading. Because they might have English as an additional language. So a visual is always something good.
That's absolutely right.
And what would you recommend? That's a new question for students if they want to also have their, you know, we often forget that we are talking about children, but they are their own they're unique individuals, and they might also want to be involved in the way the school functions. So what would you advise students to do if they want to improve communication between their parents and their teachers?
Oh, that's a very good question. Well, when my children were younger, I always wanted to show them that I really valued the job that their teacher did, because I'm a teacher. I know how hard it is. And I know how important those little moments of appreciation can be. Every teacher should have a little drawer set aside for those cards and things. And I was one of the parents that, from an early age, sort of encouraged the children to respect their teachers and show their gratitude, write little notes or little cards, or do a drawing and communicate their thanks to their teachers. That's the way to keep the respect for the teaching profession going, I think, is to let children know that someone's doing something for you, someone's helping you. Let them know when they're doing a good job. They let you know when you're doing a good job, so return the favour, please. And that's gone on into high school, and both my kids are really confident to speak to their teachers and say that they enjoyed a lesson, or they liked a resource or something like that, or they enjoyed an opportunity. And a couple of times a year we do presents. These days at secondary school it's chocolates or wine, and they go in with gifts for a few teachers that they've really appreciated this term.
Oh, that's very kind of you and your children. it's always nice to say thank you. And I think children, and I've seen it and I've experienced it, just saying thank you for today's lesson, it was really nice, goes a long way.
It really does, doesn't it? Puts a spring in your step.
Exactly. And also feedback, because sometimes the children don't even let us know if they enjoy something or if they didn't like something else. And just a constructive feedback. I remember a student saying, "Miss, you do very culture-focused displays." I had done a display about Josephine Baker, for instance. And she said, in another classroom, in the Spanish classroom, they have all the vocab and the tenses on their displays. I prefer displays that have grammar on it. So I was like, okay. And then I made sure this year I have a display which is still very cultural, but with all the numbers in English and in French. And I chose Roman numbers to keep the cultural thing going. And also, I did one display on Haiti as theme, its culture, its history, etc., but also a display on the tenses, because I thought I need to have a classroom that's inclusive. And if some people prefer grammar displays, that's fine, but I need to do it as well.
That sounds really interesting.
It is.
And a rich environment, your classroom, I bet.
Trying. But definitely having feedback. And it doesn't have to be always positive, as long as it's meant to enrich our experience. For sure.
I'm a great one for a show of hands at the end of the lesson, right? Thumbs up if you're feeling good about this and you enjoyed this and you feel confident now. Thumbs in the middle if you're still a bit shaky, and thumbs down if you just had a terrible time.
Yes, the hand gesture is a very good idea. I think I'm going to try and include it more, because we assume that if they don't understand, they put their hands up, but they don't always do that. So definitely a good tip here. Well, Laura, it was delightful to speak with you and share all these, your experience and your advice and the tips. So I would like to say thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Do you have any thoughts you want to share before we finish our interview?
Just that with a bit better communication between home and school, perhaps we find our respect for the teaching profession, a bit more appreciation, will help teachers stay in the job, which can be such a fantastic job.
It is a great job.
Yeah, we need to remember that. And teachers can be helped by parents to remember that, with polite children who are respectful and who communicate their appreciation.
Yes, I think we are on the same side. We do love our students and we really want them to succeed. So Absolutely. It's rare that in any jobs you have the same agenda. You know, all the participants, all the stakeholders in schools want children to succeed. Yeah. So we should just work a bit more collaboratively. I think that's what you were saying. And also insisting on politeness from the students, from the parents as well, but also the teachers, because some teachers can sometimes be a bit overwhelmed and a bit snappy. And sometimes we need to remind ourselves, take a big breath and, be kind.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you, Maud.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.